Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays, a podcast on musical encounters and life. Hi everyone, it's Mike D with Rock and Roll Fridays, and it's always a good day when I have a guest, so I don't have to talk by myself. My guest is Ross, and to protect the guilty, we do not have to say his last name unless he wants to. But welcome, Ross, to Rock and Roll Fridays.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here, and back to our old WMCR days with the radio show.
Yes.
Back in Western Maryland College.
Full disclosure, Ross and I went to college back in 1805. So we always talked about music, which is awesome. And we talked about music, but we also have a mutual love of sports. And one of the cool things about having guests on my show is all the backgrounds that people have, right? So Ross's background involves sports. I mean, at Western Maryland College was around the time that the Baltimore Ravens were first starting to become an NFL franchise. And Ross was one of the first, I believe, interns to get involved with the team, because the team, like the old Baltimore Colts, trained at Western Maryland College, which is now McDaniel College in Westminster, Maryland. Ross was involved in getting an internship in sports, which, as anyone knows today, getting an internship is hard enough, but getting an internship in sports is really hard. So, Ross, tell a little bit about getting that internship and also getting involved in sports, and then we'll talk sports and music for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. It's, sports and music, they bring people together. They can be divisive in terms of, I like this team, I like that team, I like this band, I like that band. It's, Ravens, Steelers, Blur, Oasis. You've got, they're all great teams, but you have your favorites there. But just being able to tie it, it's all about experience, I think, and that's what ties it together. And that's so much of what we're missing currently right now, having that concert experience, watching an NFL game, a Stanley Cup NHL game with no fans there, and it's different.
Yes.
It's still cool what they're doing, and you have to evolve and find ways. But yeah, music. I love sports. Started with those internships and coaching video for 3 different NFL teams. Moved into the PR direction, and then inherited BaltimoreRavens.com and was able to manage that for a few years before moving to NFL Network out in Los Angeles. So, and that's where you really got to see the integration. You see it with every game, the music that's played during games, pre-game, like it's decided. Like it's not like, oh, what do I want to play? They know what they're going to play.
Right. And it's interesting that you said that about when you were doing video production, because the thing about video production and the thing about highlights, think about all those highlights and videos without music. I mean, music is what makes the highlights, right? And you're right. If you really are a student of music, think about the music they play on the outs when they go to commercials. They're always based on, right? Just recently this weekend, the Eagles game, they played Motown Philly by Boys to Men, right? So they're very in tune with the regional aspect.
And it was the Seahawks game that was in Seattle. When they cut away, it was Smells Like Teen Spirit. So yeah, it's that tie, and it's that little bit of flavor that they get to bring to it.
And you've worked across NFL, NHL, football, right?
MLB, covering the Orioles.
Yeah. So talk about from a player's perspective, because the cool thing is, I mean, you've not only interfaced with musicians, but you've got to interface with professional athletes, which is really awesome. Talk about like how they look at music, not only for their preparation, but for their motivation to do what they do, right? They have a job to do. I know personally, I work in advertising and marketing. I listen to music to get going in the morning. I listen to music to calm me down, right? Like, how do these athletes utilize music to help them in their careers?
I mean, it's partially their internal brand. Here's who I am. Here's what I listen to get excited. And it might be, I feel like for so many hockey players, it's still Metallica. Like that's what they listen to. And it's, you know, different players have, hey, that's my jam. This is the thing I have to play. And then I think it may have been on one of the ESPN specials, but or maybe it was just a segment at some point, but In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins. Like if you don't have that on your warm-up soundtrack, like the stadium basically just people are like, oh, that's not a real stadium. Because they have the players as they're stretching or warming up, they want to do that drum solo, and that's almost telling them that, oh, it's game time, like it's on. I can
Yeah.
feel it in the air tonight. Whether it's a 1:00 game in the afternoon, but there are those pieces where it's just like, here's a trigger point, and everything's about to go down, and how awesome is it to be here right now?
Well, and I mean, you don't have to, I mean, I think it's sports fans when they see their, especially in the NBA, right? The walk in, when athletes are walking into the locker room, what are they always doing? They have the earplugs in, they're
Yep.
listening to music, right? I don't think they're listening to Rock and Roll Fridays, right? They're listening to
They're definitely not listening
they're
to Rock and Roll Fridays.
not yet, but they will be. But like, right? It's their, their motivation, their energy level, where they need
Well,
to get.
and looking at, I mean, I think it's really fun with baseball how players choose what song they're coming to the plate to. So you get guys that really clown it, and they, oh, I'm going to play this really poppy thing, and it's going to be really funny. And then you have people where it's more of their heritage and their background,
Right. Yeah.
and that they're representing. And then you just have people who are like, oh, you know what? I love the Foo Fighters, or I love this band, and I'm going to hear that when I'm coming up to the plate.
Yeah.
But again,
And
it goes back to, that's their brand. They're like, all of us have a playlist. Whether you're big into music or not, you have a playlist of who you are and can describe who you are at certain points of your life. And
yeah.
I think that goes even more so for athletes.
What's it? How's you always see like the videos, especially the NFL, right? It's like locker room, but NHL too. After the game, like I'm sure you've been in locker rooms in your experience. Like, are coaches open to cranky music? Like, is music part of the post game
Um,
celebration?
it can be. I mean, there's usually a person who has the sound system, and they're kind of like, it just gets decided. And there are some players that are like, oh God, I hate that song, or I hate that music even. But like it's kind of like majority rules, or okay, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure different coaches handle it different ways. Like I definitely, I'm lucky that I was in the locker room for certain things at certain times, but like that's a sacred place for the players and the coaches.
Yeah.
So they more know what's going on. It's nice that more and more cameras are allowed in there to capture that. Um, but like important things are said, and there's raw emotion that they have to get over before the media comes in the room, so that hopefully you're not, especially after a loss, hopefully you're not having issues there.
Right.
But even after a win, it's just like, okay, you know what? Be humble. We've got another game next week, this and that. Celebrate after we get out of here.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
like there'll be someone has a sound system in there typically.
And I can tell you a quick celebration story, because I'm from Philadelphia area. When the Eagles won the Super Bowl, um, we went to our favorite bar, O'Neill's, right after the Super Bowl. There were many celebratory people there, and I proceeded to play Philadelphia Freedom by Elton John 7 times in a row. Until the 8th time I tried to play it, I had a bottle of champagne in my hand. I went up, and the guy at the jukebox tapped me on the shoulder and said, don't play that song one more time. And I was like, I think he had had enough. So everyone has a breaking point when it comes to a celebratory song. But let's transition to, Rock and Roll Fridays is all about, musical encounters and life. And the cool thing about music and sports, obviously, is sometimes you get to meet people that in your life you never thought you would ever meet. I mean, 25 years ago, if someone said to me, hey, Mike, you're going to meet the Black Crowes, Bruce Springsteen, Ben Harper, and I'll throw in Tony Danza randomly.
G Love down at the shore.
Right, yeah. Like, and if someone said to you, Ross, hey, you're going to work for NFL, NHL teams and meet these pro athletes and their friends and family, like, you'd be like, no way, right? So tell me a good musical meet story where you're like, how did I end up here and how am I talking to this person?
Yeah. No, I mean, I joke about it all the time where I've had such a Forrest Gump existence because I'm just a guy, but I'm around doing stuff. And it's like, oh, this is happening now. And people are like, oh, of course you met that person. But like, I don't know, you don't get real starstruck. I don't get real starstruck. It's more like, oh, this is a great athlete. This is, they're all people.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's
cool when you can reflect on it and be like, oh, that was pretty awesome. I got to talk to that person for a little while.
But don't you agree? And from my own experience, all the people I've met, honestly, weren't dicks. And that made it even more real and fun and check the box, like, cool, meaning they were humble and they were grateful and they were sometimes more interested talking to me than I was talking to them, right?
Yeah, and there's a respect factor, and I think they can feel, are you coming in being a fanboy or just being a psycho fan? Are you just coming in, being a person, and are you respecting their space as well? So I think that's a big part of it.
Right, and I think everyone. It's funny because it's you're right. It's so true, and everyone's got a tipping point, right? Meaning, as a fan, it's funny you say fanboy. Like for me personally, Bob Dylan, all bets are off the table. I would lose my shit. I would do whatever, right? And someone
not the guy from the Gin Blossoms that you threw your hat to get autographed.
No, Gin Blossoms lower level, lose my shit. But right, everyone's got their person, right? It's like, and I recently got into this argument where, I vacation in my beloved Avalon, New Jersey, cooler by a mile. And someone said, well, Oprah Winfrey goes there. And if you saw her, I'd be like, I wouldn't do anything. Like, I'd be like, okay. So everyone, you know what I mean, Ross? Like everyone's got and for me, the people that I would freak out about, like, Neil Cassell or Chris Robinson or Rich Robinson or G Love, people would be like, I don't even know who that person is. So I think everyone has their person at the top pecking order where you probably would lose it a little bit. Obviously Paul McCartney and, presidents, I'm sure. Right. So it's, but I hear you. I think like anything else, in my experience of meeting people like that, be nice, be curious, be friendly. And at the end of the day, people that I talk to in the music business also know that those people know why you're talking to them.
Yeah.
They're famous for a reason, right? They're rock stars. They're athletes. They know you're not trying to become friends with them. You just want your 5 minutes of talking to them.
Well, and that's where, kind of leading into this, like a cool experience I had was back in 2008. Super Bowl 42 week. So it was when the Giants beat the Patriots to end the perfect season. And I was managing the total access stage at the stadium. So we had guests at night, and it was my responsibility to get them in this golf cart and drive them through this full security area and get them back to the stage. But being able to, for a New York Giants Super Bowl, pick up LL Cool J, his bodyguard, and his publicist at the car, and then drive them back. And it was great because it was, we talked football. He is a New York Giants fan. He is all love for New York. And it was cool to talk New York Giants football with LL Cool J, not worrying about, oh man, when's your next album dropping, or tell me about this or that. It was, I was doing a job and he was there to do an appearance. So, it was, hey, we're outside of a Super Bowl stadium that's going to be played, and I think he was on a Thursday. So in 3 days, this is going to be played here. And like, we're 10 people at the stadium at that point, and driving him around to the total access stage. And it was just cool. Like, that was fun. And like, thinking about that as I went, the Foo Fighters had their 20th birthday party at RFK Stadium in DC a few years ago. And it was after the Sonic Highways HBO series that they did, that LL Cool J was a part of. So I remember sitting in the stands at RFK, watching him perform again on stage, and he's explaining to the crowd, he's like, hey everyone, for those of you that don't know, this is where it started for me. Like, it was hip hop, it was rap.
Yeah.
So it was, and then I thought the stadium was going to fall apart because of the bass. And I was just like, I'm seeing LL Cool J perform again. And I drove him around on a golf cart 5 years ago or whatever it was. Like, this is pretty funny.
That's awesome. It's like,
and then earlier that week, I got to, my buddy Travis and I, we had someone who knew the schedule for everything that was going on. So the night that Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers are doing their rehearsals for the halftime show, we went into the stadium and they were checking. We found our way around some things. And
wait, that's a great musical comment. We found our way around some things.
That's
that's how fun things happen. We found our way around some things.
No PR spin there whatsoever. But it was cool. So we're out there and we watch it, but like, we're helping push the stage out there. So like, there is the group where that was their job for game day. And like, we just like, okay, we're just going to hide with these people and do what they're doing the whole time. And we watched it twice. And this is the whole way. You're taking the stage apart.
Yeah.
The band leaves.
Ross,
you put it together.
Right there. Key moment in, like, all you young fans out there, when you're sneaking in or doing something, do what they're doing, blend in, act like you always are working to get closer to your end goal.
Yeah. And that was it. And it was, security came through like after the first two, because we got to watch them play the set 4 times.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
oh my God.
I mean, it's like 100 people on the field with like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers like right there.
That's
just like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And but security came and started like checking. They're like, yeah, there's more people than there should be. So I was like, I grabbed Travis and I was like, come here. And I went right up to the fire chief and started asking him questions. And we were dressed up because we were, I mean, not ties and suits, but button-down shirts and things like that. So we looked a little bit official.
Yeah.
So I'm asking the fire chief, like, okay, what could go wrong here? How is this safe? How is that? And he got into all the details. So as security's coming by us to look, they see that I'm talking to the fire chief and they just walk straight by.
Yep. So,
we didn't do anything destructive. It was just like, yeah, we shouldn't be here, but we're going to help a little bit and enjoy the show.
So lesson number 2 to all you young people trying to sneak into things: align with people that are already in charge and act like you know what you're doing with them. And that's a great strategy to stay in the building.
Yeah, no, do it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ted, my buddy here, awesome.
Oh, well, I mean, that's an amazing story. Anytime you can be like, I saw Tom Petty with 100 people doing their sound check and rehearsal. Amazing. Like,
Yeah, and it was, and I'm just a huge fan anyway, so it's just like, wow, this is incredible.
so with the last couple minutes we have here, let's talk about Ross, one of my favorite quotes. And I know you're a reader and a writer. So one of my favorite quotes about music is actually by a beat writer, Jack Kerouac. He said, music is the ultimate truth. So I ask everyone on the show, what is it about music that's the ultimate truth? What is it that makes it special, different, engaging, harmonious, mind blowing? What is the thing about music that makes it so unique?
It should evoke emotion or action from anyone. So you can have the most stoic, like I think of, like my dad's so stoic. But man, when we would drive to Ocean City when I was a little kid and he'd put on either the Pointer Sisters or Lionel Richie or something like that,
Yeah.
as soon as you saw his finger going on the wheel, it was like, you know, to him that was like headbanging to someone at a Metallica concert. Like as soon as he was into it, you know
Yes.
what? And that's the move. When you can watch someone else transform that simply, that you know that it's resonating with them, that's what it is. Like it's listening to a song for the first time and being like, wow. But then it's listening to the song for the 50th time and being like, wow, that's even better than I thought it was. You know,
Yes.
like that's what it's narrative, it's
Yes.
storytelling. Like that's who we are as animals and people, is we're storytellers. And when you have musicians doing it in such a way that it's the instruments, it's the layering, it's how they're delivering, and you know, just the mixing of things now, like music. And you know, you get noise reduction headphones or something where you're really hearing the levels and the different layers. It's such a magical experience.
Yes. I concur. And I think the beauty of music is sharing also, right? Like friends, family, when you're like, you got to listen to this,
Yeah.
right? Like there's not many things in life where you're like, you got to do what I'm doing, right? It's like, here's the thing, and I know amongst you and our friends and our people, like music is one of the most shareable elements, right? It's like, oh my God, there's a new band, there's a new sound. But like sometimes, and I can tell you from experience, to your point about the 50th time, like I will text a friend and be like, hey, Dave, Blood on the Tracks is still awesome by Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Like nothing's changed. It's still amazing. And you should listen to it again, right? Like it's just
Or when you get that text from someone who says, I just heard that song, do you remember when this happened?
yes.
You
Right.
know, and it's those time markers.
Right. And also, Ross, the one thing I recognized as I've gotten older, and I will never be old, but people that, and I'm there, right? I when you defend your music and your sound, meaning this means something to me, and uh this is good whether you like it or not. I'm gonna not fight you, but like you should listen to this, right?
Yeah.
And like
I'm going to make my point.
yeah, like your father about that point about tapping the finger. My father with oldies, like you got to listen to this oldie song. I've heard it 1,000 times. I still don't like it, but I know you love it.
Yeah.
So the importance to you is the importance to me. And I think as you get older with music, and we have friends that differ differ on music, you can respect the sound and the musicians without subjectively liking the music, right?
Right.
Like you know me well enough. I don't love rap, I don't love country, but my brother loves country. My college friends love rap, and you start to appreciate the artists for doing what they're doing, that the sound is still amazing. It's just you don't like it, right? So I
Yeah.
think there's something
You're not going to
there.
be the one playing it, but that doesn't mean, like, I know just from our college days and things like that, that, there are probably Wu-Tang Clan songs and Fugees that you hear and you're just like, yeah, nice. But you're not necessarily going to play those. But if you hear them, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, this is great.
Yes, and I think as you get, I hate to say older, but it is something about like a fine wine, where as a museologist, if you will, like you can
Is that
acknowledge
like a
the,
scientician?
yeah, you can acknowledge the difference between subjectively not liking it but quality, right? Meaning the Fugees, I, 20 years ago I was like, I don't like them, but now I listen, I'm like, they were the music is fantastic,
Mm.
the lyrics are amazing, right? The band is great,
Yeah, and
like
Lauryn Hill, and then what she did with her solo album, and it just where each of them went individually as well, and the talent is there.
right. And so I just think as you get older and you think about it, it's like, you know, I hear a lot of people say, I don't like blues, I don't like jazz. Okay, I give you that, but you can't say that that's bad music, right? You can't say, and that's me saying, talking about rap and hip hop, right? I would never say it's bad music. It's not my music, but those artists formed something, created something, drove a kind of musical movement
Mm-hmm.
that has led into other areas of music. And it's like when you start to think like that, I think you actually open up your mind to listening to more stuff. And about that, like when you have people playing music that you never listened to before, you actually listen to more stuff and you actually like it. And I'll give you an example. My brother's a giant country music fan. I went to a couple years ago called the Outlaw Festival. It was awesome. I saw Willie Nelson for the first time ever.
Yep.
I saw Sheryl Crow. I saw these bands that I'm like, who is this guy? He's super talented. I might not love the genre, but
Yep.
you start to experience it in a different level, that because you're hearing it for the first time and you're hearing it with people that you like and appreciate. So it was a really cool moment. And my brother has turned me on to quote country people that I'm like, oh my God, it sounds like rock and roll. Well, he's like, it's country, right? So
Yep.
I'm sure you've
No.
been through that as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's there, and I mean, Foo Fighters are one of my favorite bands. Like, I love Dave Grohl, and that whole group. But I think what I think the most impactful thing that he has done, and that the Foo Fighters have done, is the Sonic Highways special they did, documenting the history of music in these different places with these different sounds. It's in Nashville, it's in Austin, it's Chicago, it's Washington, D.C., it's Seattle, L.A. And I don't know if you've watched it yet, but like that, the stories that he tells there, and something cool that came out of that, when I worked for the Wild and we hosted the Blackhawks in Minnesota for an outdoor stadium series game, I got to interview Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick. And that's probably the most geeked out I've ever been about interviewing someone. I was like, this guy's going in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame like in a month or so.
That's awesome.
Um, but the stories that they're able to tell and the questions that I was able to ask him because I watched the Chicago episode of Sonic Highways meant more. So
It's
it's
awesome.
just it's storytelling. It's
Yes.
good stuff.
Awesome. So Rock and Roll Fridays, love talking to Ross about sports and music, meeting LL Cool J and watching Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. with about 100 people, and the importance of music in life, and also understanding how you can find out about new bands and new genres in music through your friends and family, which is really important. So, Ross, I appreciate it. And thanks for being on Rock and Roll Fridays.
Thanks for having me, man. Great job.
Awesome.